Welcome back to One on One with Mr. U. Of course, I am your host, Mr. U. In studio with us today, three-time best-selling author, TEDx Speaker, podcast host, and the CEO of Podcast Solutions. He does a lot of stuff. He does a whole lot of stuff. Carl Rich is in the house with us today. Carl, how are you, man? Good to have you here.
I'm stoked. Thank you, Mr. U. I'm glad to be here. I'm thrilled. I mean, I'm talking to Mr. U. I'm adding this to my claims to fame, right? Of great people I talk to. Oh, I talk to Mr. U. I mean, that's you know.
I don't know how much that is in podcast currency, but I hope it's worth more than a nickel. So we'll see.
It's worth at least two nickels, I think. So
I hope so at least. But good to have you in here, man. Our pre-interview conversation was fantastic. I definitely want to get into that stuff in the short time that we have today. But as customary, I always ask all of our guests coming in, describe your childhood, your upbringing. What was life like for young Carl? Usually, it's an easy answer. For some folks, it's kind of triggering. They go into some places. We're ready for it either way. So take it away, Carl. What was your childhood upbringing like, man?
I'll tell you, I was born in the 70s, and back in the 70s, everyone's mother dressed them funny. So I was that kid. But I'm also the kid who stuttered. So not only did my mother dress me funny, but I couldn't get the words out without stuttering. So there I am looking like I'm stuttering. So anyways, growing up was okay, as I said, except for the stutter. The stutter was tough, man. Like, it was just, I couldn't wrap two words together. My parents tried their best to fix it. They would say things like stop and start again. Outside of the stuttering, my childhood was pretty cool. I'm the middle child, so I suffer from middle child syndrome. I tell people I suffer, but it's not really suffering. But no, I grew up with a dad who worked in a steel mill. My mom, for the first several years of my life, my brother's life, she was a stay-at-home mom. Went back to work when we were all in high school. But yeah, growing up was pretty cool. Eventually, as far as the stuttering goes, entered speech therapy, and I didn't grow out of it. You never really grow out of it, but I learned how to manage it. And as I went into high school, I was an awkward teenager, but at least I didn't stutter.
So. Yeah, no, I actually can relate. I think I was considered more of a stammerer, if you will. I'm not personally different myself, but I was a little bit different there. So yeah, you have to. It's something to be managed. You can't just snap your finger and it just disappears. You got to deal with that. That's the whole reason why it even happens. I get tongue twisted from time to time, but I don't live in my head about it. I kind of just keep on moving and just have fun and enjoy this thing, man. That's all I can really do, man.
That's the thing. You just, you keep going. And there are a number of people who they've stuttered their whole lives, and they've managed to get it under wraps and accept that. And they'll join an organization like Toastmasters to help them manage it better and things like that. And yeah, it's part of who you are, right? So it's in your DNA. Likely forever. I still stammer and stutter every now and again when I'm situations like this. It's natural, right? So
yeah, well, I don't want you to be overwhelmed over here. This is a casual, cool, calm conversation. So I want you to enjoy yourself here, man.
Yep.
But we talked about Canada a little bit. I got some family that moved there from the Virgin Islands to Florida to Canada, so they're in the Ontario area. But tell me why you love being in Canada. I know there's a lot going on in the news, and there's always something going on with Canada that we hear about here in the U.S. But why do you love being in Canada?
I've known no other country as far as as calling it home. But what I like about Canada is we're just a friendly bunch of people. Like I've had the opportunity to travel to other countries, and I'm not saying other countries there aren't friendly people there, but some countries you go to and their level of friendliness is different, or the way in which they react to things are certainly very different.
That's true.
As a Canadian, we have the opportunity to visit Cuba, and Cuban people are really, really friendly. But I'd still say Canadians are super, super friendly. We don't lock our doors. We don't have to. We live in a smaller community, so we don't have to do that. Yeah. When I tell people I don't lock my doors, I don't even know where my house keys are. People go, "What? What about security?" I'm like, "Security? I mean, I have a dog. That's my security." but even that, that's a kind of the other thing that I really like about Canada. I've had a chance to visit 6 provinces. 6 of our 10. Anyways, what I like about it is every province of Canada has its own unique flair. So if you're going to the East Coast, for example, it's very much a lot of Celtic music and things like that. You get into Quebec. Quebec is very old world because of French. You come into Ontario, it's a little bit more your metropolitan cities like you'd see in New York and other cities like that. But still a lot of beautiful countryside. You go to northwestern Ontario, rather. That's where you start to see things change and more boreal forest. You get to the prairies, it's more flat land. There's a lot of wheat and farming that happens out there. And then you get to the Rocky Mountains and the West Coast, and you're in a completely different part of the country with a lot of, places where people go and snowboard and ski in the winter, and the climate because it's on the Pacific Ocean, that end, because of that, the climate is very different. It's more like a London, England type climate where you'll have January where it's raining and 9 degrees. So that's what I like about it. And every city seems to have its unique culture almost as well. So it's a pretty unique place in that sense.
Wow, that is unique. I'd love for you to kind of help me out and kind of bust one or two myths about Canada. You hear things about Canada. I mean, I got family up there, so I hear little things too. But for the most part, we get a lot of our cues from print, from media, television, etc.
Yeah.
Bust one or two myths for us, Carl, about Canada.
Oh my goodness! It doesn't snow.
I'll take it.
It doesn't snow all year round.
Okay.
There are people who have arrived from places like Florida. No disrespect, Floridians, but it doesn't snow all year round here. So if you arrive to Canada in July and you cross the border and you have skis, you might be driving quite a ways until you find snow hills to go skiing on. Water skis, yes. What other myths about Canada?
There's a lot of these. I feel like there's like more than just one or two, but I mean, maybe you don't.
Because it's such a vast. That's another thing. It's a very vast country. So and again, this happens, I think, in every country that we've been in and visited. People will say, "Oh, you're from Canada," and they'll say, "Where in Canada?" "Oh, I'm in Ontario." "Okay, well, do you know so and so in British Columbia, Vancouver?" And I'll say, "Oh, no." Every now and again, I'll get a little cute though, and I'll say, "Yes, we actually had lunch in Halifax last week," which is, if you understand the vastness of that, that would be like a 6-hour flight just to go and have lunch with someone in a completely different in 3 completely different provinces. So the vastness of the country, I think, is one. The other thing I think is that a lot of people still think that we live in snow huts. So people think that you cross the border, there's snow all the time, we're living in igloos. No, I live in a house. It's got air conditioning because this time of year.
No way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We've had a heat wave as of at the recording of this conversation. It's about, I'd say on the Fahrenheit side, about 90, 95. So that's pretty warm.
The whole country is feeling this, brother.
Right.
We're probably 97 right now as we speak, probably about 97 almost. So.
Yeah. So there's a few myths busted as far as Canada goes.
I love this. A lot of our listeners are in either one of 4 categories. Podcasters trying to be full-time at that, or at least part-time, trying to turn into a business. They want to go into broadcasting, or they have some kind of media interest, or just content creators and stuff. So we're going to be speaking to them a lot today because there's some keen insights on podcasting, business ownership, and why it's important in your assessment to start a podcast. We're going to talk about all of those things. I want to spend a little bit more time talking about what you do up in Canada and stuff. Then we'll kind of jump into this stuff. So now there's a place called 1,000 Islands. Is that near Ontario?
That's right. Yes, right at the border. We border with upstate New York, so we're about a 6-hour drive from New York City, from where we are. Okay. They call it the 1,000 Islands. There's actually 1,800 islands, and so 1,806 islands or something like that in the 1,000 Islands. I think they got to 1,000 and said, let's just call it the Thousand Islands. That sounds easier.
Yeah.
But they're all beautiful islands.
Can you live on the islands? On these 1,000 islands?
So some of them you can, and some of them are large. Like some of them, there are communities living on them. So one of the islands in the Thousand Islands is called Wolf Island, and it is its own. It's like a town on an island. There's about maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people. Maybe I'm being a little bit over generous with that number, but there's at least 1,000 people, I would say, that live on Wolf Island, and you have to take a ferry to get there. And it runs all year round. Even in the winter, they have systems that allow you to do that. There are other islands, though, that are owned by private citizens. Like, you could own an island in the Thousand Islands, and, you might use that as your summer getaway, your summer destination. And you might have a boat that you take to and from your cottage or from your summer home. So there are a number of people who do have islands or do have summer cottages. Some of them are been passed down from generation to generation.
I see. My family had not mentioned this place at all. They're in London. They haven't mentioned this part at all. Okay. I'll get with them later. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about your broadcasting career and what you've experienced there, and then you're going to transition into podcasting and business ownership piece. But you spent like more than 25 years behind the microphone. I mean, talk about radio, I think stage is something you also were involved with. But at the end of the day, you were influencing audiences around the world.
Yeah.
It's really, really awesome. Kind of talk to me about, because when I hear stuff like that, people say, oh, how was it like? I don't want to answer a dumb question like how was it? I want to be a little bit, I want to go a little bit deeper than that. What kind of tangible takeaways do you see from that time after 25 years of being in front of the mic? Because, I mean, I have to believe that it's not like 25 years at a corporate job that you just kind of just die slow in the cubicle in situation like that. But behind the microphone, I'm hoping it's not like a cubicle, but how did you grow in those 25 years? What did you gain from that? How did it change you? Is that a better question to ask?
Sure. Yeah. It's a good question to ask. And let me tell you too, that the broadcast industry has evolved a lot. I mean, when I got into radio, every little small community had a full service radio station with, morning hosts, middays, afternoons,
that's a long time ago.
Weekends, evenings. You had a full slate of staff. Now, of course, with automation and what we call voice tracking, the ability to record shows, a lot of it is done simulcasting coast to coast, right? So you have fewer people, which means the industry itself is shrinking. But honestly, it really paved the way for me for what I do today, because firstly, it was in my blood to want to be in broadcasting. I fell in love with radio when I was probably about, 8 or 9 years old. I listened to the radio. I listened to our local AM station. They would do a big 500 countdown every year. And I was that kid that would sit there with his tape recorder, waiting to record his favorite song. That was me.
Back in time, man. You're taking me back in time. Oh my goodness. It's a good thing. I'm like, wow, it's kind of overwhelming. I'm like,
yeah. But that's really what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to be an actor. But I said, well, for every actor that makes it, there's about 10,000 saying, would you like fries with that at your local drive-thru? So I said, well, why don't I get into radio? Because there's a lot of people who start in radio who end up being in film or television. You look at guys like Ryan Seacrest, Alex Trebek, who's passed away now, of course. Even going back further, a guy by the name of Lauren Green, who was on Bonanza.
Okay.
Well, he came from the CBC, the Canadian Broadcast Company, and he was known as the voice of doom because he would announce all of the daily. He would announce all of in the Second World War. He would announce everything that's going on. There's been bombings here. There's been this attack here. He was doing all of that. So I thought, you know what, I could do that. And anyways, I never did get into acting other than community theater and stuff like that, which I also enjoyed. But I think the biggest thing that I learned in being in broadcasting was the ability to style shift, but also the ability to be versatile. When you work in radio, you never know what format you're going to work in. You might start working at a rock station or a pop station that you love, And then you might, through no fault of your own, be shown the door because they're making corporate restructuring, as they like to call it. So you never know what your next job's going to be. So one of the things that I never thought that I would see myself doing was, most of my career, I've predominantly worked at country stations. Wow, believe it or not. Now country music has evolved a lot.
Do you have country music in Canada?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So they refer to the Alberta, but Calgary, Alberta, as Nashville North. Yeah. So country music, yeah, and of course now country music is very poppy. So it's very hot right now, pretty much right across the board. Yeah. But I never thought that I'd be working at a country station, not just one, but 3 of them, or was it 4 of them? Anyways, I've worked at let's say 3 or 4 of them in my career. Never thought I'd be doing that. I never thought that, because when I got into radio, I always wanted to be on air. So I never thought I'd be in management. I never thought I'd be in programming. I never thought I'd be a music director. I had all of those opportunities. So I got to learn the business of radio. And the other thing that I got to do that I was never really a fan of, but I did it anyways, is I was in the news department almost every station I worked at, and I hated it. But then I started to realize when I left the radio world, wait a minute, this being in the news department really taught me how to communicate and truncate my ideas and focus on telling a story. Because when you're delivering the news, essentially you're telling a story, right? So I think those are some key takeaways as I learned about the business of radio, which has been very beneficial in my business. But then I've also learned to storytell and truncate information and give just the right amount of information to get a point across or share some insights. So those are some of the key takeaways. That's amazing, the parallel between broadcasting and podcasting. I don't know if we're going to get to that or not, but there is a parallel for sure.
That's actually my next question. So I'm already ready for that.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I refer to podcasting, and I know a lot of people do, as it's radio. It's modern day radio. What radio used to be.
I like that.
Yeah. What radio used to be, where there was a lot of different programming. You'd listen to your local radio station, and they would have everything from it's the shopping hour, or they'd have it's the morning talk show right after the 9 o'clock news. And then you'd have that. Yeah, all of those things that. And you'd have little vignettes and segments that would pop up along the way as well. There's a guy, I don't know if you know him or not. His name is Paul Harvey. He's since passed on as well. And Paul Harvey was the guy that you'd always hear. I always heard him anyways after the noon news. And he would do his little introduction, his preamble about what the story is going to tell. And then there would be that commercial because you're waiting to hear who he's talking about. And that person went on to be Mr. You. And now you know the rest of the story. Well, people ate that up. You had some legends also that were in radio, like Wolfman Jack and people like that. You had some really big names, and podcasting has seen some of the transference of that domination of there's big names in the podcasting space. But what it's also done is allowed people like you and I, who don't have massive audiences, say like a Ryan Seacrest or an Oprah Winfrey or people like that, be in a place where we can build our own networks, build our own audiences as we wish, structure our content that's not in a cookie cutter format like radio was, and deliver it to our audience, and they'll love us because they love our content. So there's a parallel though between the quality that goes out too. So, but definitely,
that's a whole nother story.
That's a whole other story altogether.
Yeah. But we have, like I said before, we have a lot of podcasters and content creators, people who have a desire to be in some kind of broadcast media. Maybe they want to be on the next ESPN, Fox Sports. I don't know. But I know a lot of them have aspirations to do some things and take podcasting to another level. Why do you think it's a benefit to have a podcast? And somebody who maybe is thinking about going into business, why do they need that, or why should they need it?
Yeah, I think at every point there are things that savvy business owners know. When you get to a certain point in business, you know that that's when you start to, for example, write a book, right? You're going to write a book because That's what we've been told to do. Especially if you're a solopreneur, you get to a certain level in your business, you write a book or 2 or 3 or 6 or 8. Used to be 30 years ago, you would write a book and then you would go on a speaking tour. And you can still do that. But now it's write a book and go on a podcasting tour, right? So
I don't know what that is.
So the needle has changed. So things have shifted a little bit. And there are still speakers that will go on physical stages. But what I like is that a podcast is a virtual stage. That means if I do something or if I have a message I want to get out there, I can do it from the comfort of my own home or somewhere in my office. If I have office space, I can do it there. I don't have to physically go there. And if I want to get on somebody else's show, I can do the same thing. That's what we're doing today. You're in your space, I'm in mine, and we're talking and we're communicating with your audience, which thank you very much, by the way, for allowing me to do this.
I'm glad to have you here.
It used to be, though, you had to go to a radio studio and you had to tour the world and get the messaging out. And now it just makes it a little bit simpler to do that. But the other thing I like about it is the fact that with podcasting, it's on demand.
Okay.
You know, you can take it anywhere. It's on demand and it's portable, which means if you can't listen at the recording of this, my time, it's 20 after 11 Eastern. If you can't listen at that time, but you can listen during your lunch or on your drive home, great. Listen then. With programming as it used to be, it was called appointment tuning or it was called streaming. You had to listen. That's why, waiting for your favorite song to come on to, on a countdown to hit record. It's a trip down memory lane, but people we're not doing that anymore. We like the convenience of being able to engage in content when we are able to do it. So
it makes a lot of sense.
The other bonus about podcasting is it allows you to niche. So if you have a very niche, and again, this is business 101. I've had a coach tell me you have to be niche. You have to narrow it down, niche it down. If you have a niche or niche, depending on how you're pronouncing it,
nobody else does apparently.
Okay. But if you have a niche, then there's a space in the podcasting world for you, and your audience is looking for you. And they don't have to go through a sea of content to find you. They just, type in their keywords that is your niche, and there you are, and there you'll be. It's another way to develop that know, like, and trust factor as well. As we have become busier people, and as we have evolved, there are, I don't even know what the number now is, Mr. Yu. It used to be 5,000 or 6,000 messages that are sent to us every day from billboards, magazines.
That number been doubled.
Push notifications, emails, text messages, whatever it is. Cutting through all of that noise means being able to put yourself above the rest. And a podcast allows you to do that and continuously develop that know, like, and trust factor. So people will eventually, firstly, they'll follow you. They'll take your advice and your insights. And you never know just when they might become a client.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I want to get into what it's like. Well, you mentioned about a podcast being a speaking opportunity. I want you to kind of flip it out a little bit more, but I want to ask you something else first.
Okay.
As a TEDx speaker, do you foresee, or is it already happening? Because I haven't seen it. That's why I'm asking. So forgive my ignorance. But are TEDx speakers actually speaking on virtual stages now instead of the actual stages? Is that happening right now, or is that something that's going to be happening soon, you think?
Oh, it started happening before the pandemic, but I think it's still happening. We saw a lot of virtual summits and virtual conferences pop up during the pandemic. Well, you know what? I attended a virtual conference last week, and I was able to book 3 calls from being at that virtual conference. And I was only there for 45 minutes to an hour because I had something else I had to do. And already this week, I've been at 2 other virtual events, one of which was an all-day or pretty much an all-day summit with speakers. I was one of the speakers. I'm not, so yes, there are people who literally that's all they do is they speak on virtual stages. They speak on virtual events or on virtual events. Are there still stages, physical stages? Absolutely there are. Will there always be? Yes. But I think what we're seeing is more of a hybrid model where virtual and physical meet. And conference organizers know this too. They're already setting up this, and the technology now is getting better at it. So not only do you have a virtual platform where people can visit, but you have the physical space as well. So both conference goers can enjoy the experience. So, but I think we're seeing a lot of that, but there's still that hunger or that desire to want to connect face to face. And I don't mean face to face like you and I are doing. This is great. I love this.
No, I like it
But
too.
there's still that I want to press the flesh. I want to shake your hand and say, Misty, you know what? You give you a sweaty bear hug because it's 37 degrees Celsius outside and say, it's great to meet you. You know what I mean? Because I think as people, we need that human connection, that in-person contact. But virtual is really, even now that we're endemic or even beyond that, we're still seeing a lot of virtual platforms and virtual stages. And also, honestly, if for no other reason, it's less expensive for conference organizers to organize a virtual event than an in-person event.
Yeah.
So there's a reason right there. You can organize an in-person event and, get a whole bunch of speakers together and not have it cost you a ton of cash to do that.
No, I totally get that. I'm thinking about breaking, I guess I say breaking in, because I've done a little tiny bit before in the past, but breaking into public speaking again. So I'm just kind of just, do my little research and everything. So that answer helped me out a little bit. So thank you for that. Totally. You mentioned 5 myths that kind of hold people back from starting a podcast. I'm supposed that are watching and listening and probably pondering it, or they're kind of doing it on a small scale, but not very seriously, not very consistently. Mm-hmm. What are the 5 myths? Can you name those for our listeners?
Absolutely. The first myth is the money myth, not understanding the value or thinking that it's too expensive to get started. There is some investment to it, and everyone starts at a different place, but understanding the value, I like to look at it as understanding the value of not having a podcast. How much money are you leaving on the table? How many clients who could be looking for your podcast are you not connecting with because of that? So we work with clients that they'll make a chunk of money from their podcast because they've gotten a client from their show. So that's the money myth, not understanding and not appreciating the value of what the podcast can bring you. The second myth is the content myth. What am I ever going to talk about on a podcast? Well, you already have content. If you're in business, you've likely sent emails, you likely have courses, you likely have done workshops, seminars, webinars, all of those things. You might even have intellectual property. It's not about content creation. It's about content curation and setting it up so it's palatable for a podcasting audience to digest. So you don't want to put it all in one episode, but if you broke it down into bite-sized pieces and delivered, say, 10 to 15 minutes of content every week, now all of a sudden, with guests or solo, now all of a sudden, people are starting to develop, as I said earlier, that know, like, and trust factor. The third myth is the competition myth. Who's ever going to listen to me? And there are too many podcasts out there already. Well, I always like to flip it and say, how many websites are out there? It doesn't stop you from having a business just because there are too many websites out there, right? So, and as far as the number of podcasts go, there's fewer than you think, and there's fewer than that are active. The whole premise, though, should be, what value are you bringing to the table with your show? Yes, there's competition, but think about it. Think about what your listeners, or think about what your audience needs to hear from you. So, and competition's healthy, by the way. The fourth myth is the tech myth. It's too complicated. It's too confusing. We throw our hands up in the air and say, I can't do this. Yeah, it can be, but I also don't do my own dentistry. I've never performed surgery on myself. You know why? Yeah, thankfully. I also don't fix my own car. Why? Because for me, it's too technical. So when you need to figure out something that's technical, what do? You go to an expert who knows or can give you some advice. Or, if you don't know how to do something, when we're younger, we're taught, what do? You want to learn how to become a doctor? Great. Go to medical school, right? So you get the insights and all that expertise from them. And the fifth myth is time. How much time is this going to take? Time is precious. Time is precious. We've worked on podcast episodes that are 2 minutes long, 3 minutes long. We worked on podcast episodes that are an hour to an hour and a half long. The messaging there is, how long does your podcast need to be? How long can your audience engage with you? That's the bigger message. So if it needs to be 20 minutes, make it 20 minutes. There's no podcasting rule that says your show has to be 2 hours long or an hour long. But the sweet spot is that 20 to 30 minute mark. That's generally what I like to share with people. And as far as the time commitment, we also help people figure that out. And there's some other ways that you can manage the time piece as well. And part of that is collaborating with others in what we like to refer to as a podcast co-op. So there's ways that you can collaborate and share ideas, which make it easier and more effective use of time than trying to figure it all out on your own.
No,
So
absolutely.
those are the 5 minutes.
We're kind of up against it time wise, and
We are. That's why I was saying it quickly.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a final question, and I also want to send everybody to your link so they can find your strategy session. I want to ask you a question about one thing you said. Answer it briefly for me. Creation versus curation. Flesh that out as fast as you can. You mentioned about it's not about content creating, it's about content curating. Help me out with that.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people think they have to go and create a boatload of content. I have to create content, You've already created content. So now it's about taking the content you've created and massaging it or curating it or adapting it for a podcast audience. So you can't take a whole workshop, or a whole course that you've created, say 12-week or 16-week course, and put that into one episode. But can you break it down into bite-sized pieces so you can present it to your audience like that? A lot of people think, and this is true with people who do lives, Facebook lives and stuff like that, they feel they have to always be creating content. No, you have content. It's how are you bringing that content out and reminding people that this is what you do and this is what you have. That's content curation.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right, and you're offering a 30-minute podcast strategy session to explore. I guess starting a podcast is a good idea to kind of elevate your brand, your business and what have you. And it's podcastsolutionsmadesimple.com, right?
Yep. Podcastsolutionsmadesimple.com. You'll see a link to go to the booking page, and it doesn't matter what stage of the game you're at. If you're just getting started, just kicking the tires, need information, want to find out more, it's a great way to start. And even if you want to just start out by having a conversation with us about guesting on podcasts, we can help you have a conversation about that as well and strategize. So,
all right, well, that sounds awesome. And so podcastsolutionsmadesimple.com. Very, very good. All right, final question for your call. Thanks for jumping in here. It's been fun today. Last question is customary for all of our guests in here. Makes them always think and kind of go deep into the archive. You can see their gears turning, trying to answer this question, but it's always a fun question, always insightful. So if you're not doing what you're doing right now, that means we're taking broadcasting and radio off of this table. We're taking stage work off of this table. We're taking your authoring off the table. We're taking your podcast work as CEO of PSMS off of the table. What is Carl Richards likely doing career, vocation-wise, mission-wise? Please say something that's not having to do with logging. Please don't say that as your answer. Give me something else.
No, seriously though, I think I'd be traveling. I think I'd be traveling and just share. Yeah, I think I would be traveling.
You traveling with no job?
Well, if I'm not doing that, if I don't need that as a vocation, I think I'd be traveling. I think I would. Yeah. I've thought about doing a traveling or travel podcast or travel vlog or something like that, awesome. Which is just pretty cool. It took me a while to get into travel. Now that I've gotten into it and I've seen Cuba, Costa Rica, Mexico, parts of Germany, as well as Amsterdam. I just want to go see more, and I want to be able to talk about it and share with people what it's like and meet some of the people from those communities.
That's awesome.
And also taste and share some of the fine cuisine that corners of the world that we might never see, as long as my stomach can handle it. That's
amazing. I don't have room for another podcast, but I would love to do that.
Yeah, that would be fun. I'd like that.
And insightful. Carl, thanks for jumping in here, man. This was fantastic, man. Any closing thoughts for our listeners, man, before we close out of here, man?
I would say, other than thank you, Mr. Yu, for having me on, I would say whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is that you're thinking about doing, just take that first step. Just start. Just take that first step.
Well, if you guys are thinking about starting your own podcast, or you're kind of in a place where you're kind of in a bit of a rut, maybe you're not getting things worked out calendar-wise, scheduling-wise. I know many of you guys that are watching that I know that's true about you. I didn't say your name, but I know it's true. Carl Richards is the man. His information to be in the show notes. And of course, I believe if you don't mind, Carl, jump onto our YouTube channel if you don't mind, where this episode is. Drop any links you have, contact info in the comment section of the episode so people can find you kind of easy, man. So appreciate this time, brother. It's been insightful to say the least. Hope it's not the last time we get together, but thanks again for joining us. Carl, emcee, we're out of here. Have a great day.